My name is Carlos Mota. I'm an artist based in New York. I am originally from Colombia, but I have been living in the United States for the past 18 years. My work deals primarily with political histories and the way that the history is constructed, narrated, disseminated. I'm interested in the ways that the construction of history is an arbitrary process that has been conditioned and motivated by those in power. And I don't mean political power, but I mean ideological, cultural, racial, class power, and so on. I think it's actually quite interesting to me to live in the United States when, say for instance, engaging in questions of US intervention in the history of Latin American politics and life, because it has allowed for a certain kind of distance and also as a kind of paradoxical relationship to being and producing from the place that you are so vehemently criticizing, in a sense. A brief history of US interventions in Latin America since 1946 is a part of a larger project that I worked on from 2004 to 2006, which is titled the SOA Cycle. And the SOA stands for the School of the Americas. The School of the Americas was a Cold War institution, founded and funded by the United States, initially in the Panama region, where they would train Latin American military in a wide range of military strategies, techniques, counterinsurgency tactics, anti-communist rhetoric. So you have, for example, very well-known military dictators like Hugo Banzer in Bolivia or General Noriega in Panama that were students of this school. Every time there has been a bloody, violent military intervention, you can point it back to people that have been trained in that institution. The imprints of these hands here correspond to the White Hand Death Squad in El Salvador. They used to use white paint and mark places where they had carried on military confrontations, if you will. So it's a painted hand, but it's also a bloody hand, but it's also an imprint, but it's also a signature, but it's also a stamp, and it becomes, in a way, emblematic or symbolic of the amount of violence that has been taking place. The piece to me is an attempt to summarize, to understand the effects of US military intervention in the region. And it includes a wide number of cases, like the Iran-Contra affair, for instance, the ousting of Salvador Allende from power in Chile in 1973, the 1954 United Fruit Company instance in Guatemala. So the idea with researching and writing some of these entries was to make evident the economic interest in relationship to political interest and how military intervention was a way to preserve both of those interests in the region. This piece was initially conceived to be a takeaway piece because I was interested in having this piece be distributed as widely as possible. This will be the 9th print run of the poster. Probably 20,000, 30,000 of these copies have been distributed in the last 10 years. The screen print for the collection of the museum, I like to think in a way that it's a little intervention into the history of the collection at the Guggenheim. Because even though the piece was initially intended to be disseminated freely, I think it is very important that this artifact will remain as something that is archival, that it's protected, and that has the level of an artwork, and that will remain in the collection of the museum for as long as we know. That history will be part of this hegemonic construct of American art and American history, and international art in a sense. It's not the presentation that I favored in the past, but it's one that I'm really interested in now, because being part of that permanent collection with that specific narration of these historical events that involve so strongly the United States military and government is, I think, quite remarkable.